Welcome to Spartan Up Podcast. We are your grit and resiliency partners. When I saw that Brian Johnson was on the list, I thought that can't be the Brian Johnson. And I've been following him for years, a big fan. Joe De Sena, CEO and founder of Spartan Race.
I love this interview. This guy I've known for years. He's known of Spartan for years. He's actually talked a lot about Spartan on some of his different digital ecosystems. He had Philosopher notes.
Optimize is the big one now. I used to follow him on Entheos.
Yeah. So he's reviewed like 800 books, but he talks to his audience and he says, guys, you got to get out and do a Spartan race. I think he's bringing 500 Spartans to a race in California this year.
I learned so much. It was so much fun watching you guys interact because I like to say that he is to Athens what you are to Sparta. Like you're both Greek philosophers in your own way, and the back and forth interplay and how much I learned and how much you guys shared was pretty amazing.
It's funny, right? Because I think that's a really good description. He's a lot more verbose, right? He's got the ability to really dive in and
erudite.
Yes, and whereas I've got 3 words and a grunt and a rock.
Yeah.
But we get along like brothers, and super cool interview.
We're here every Tuesday. Joe goes all over the world, meets the most interesting people, including one we're going to talk about today. But other times during the week, we have experts that come on with tips and tricks to make you better, faster, stronger. So check us out, subscribe, make sure that you're with us because Joe meets the most incredible people.
Stay through to the end because we're going to highlight and accentuate some of the things you could apply to your own life.
Absolutely.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by True Form Runner. Conquer your next race with the complete training solution from Spartan and True Form. The Spartan True Form Trainer will redefine your running. Find out more at trueformrunner.com.
All right, we are here for Spartan Up Podcast. I got Brian Johnson. Can I call you an old buddy?
I would appreciate that. Yeah.
Right?
Feels like
an old buddy. It's like we call each other brothers. So he's the smarter one, better looking, faster. That's okay. I'll get there. And he's got a better beard. So check this thing out. Let's get into this before we get into Brian, who Brian is. I got gifted this thing yesterday from SOS, Special Ops Survivors. There is a box on the table in front of Brian and I, and it looks like, what would you call this, Brian? Those old...
dynamite exploder kind of things, right?
Dynamite exploder kind of things, and it's built out of... I'm sure you get a lot of gifts. I get a lot of gifts, but this is like takes the cake because what they did was they took parts and pieces from like submarines and fighter jets, and you could see bullet casings. But the best is, and this is going to tie into Brian Johnson here, the best is they sent Navy SEAL Team 2 to Thermopylae for me to pick up sand, and there is sand in some of the shell casings here from Thermopylae.
No way.
Yeah. Is that unbelievable?
That is unbelievable.
So, and I got chills. Special Ops Survivors, SOS, gave it to me, and what that is basically fallen soldiers in the Special Forces. The wives are left behind. The kids are left behind. And so this charity comes in and helps those families.
Wow.
So one of the wives was there, one of the widows, and it's awesome. It's unbelievable. Anyway.
Yeah, that's inspiring. And what you did on 9/11 is unbelievable as well.
For those that don't know, what we did was we gave away entries to all those that served, but not just served in the military, but if you wear a uniform, fire, police, emergency medical, because those people go into danger, kind of like the Spartans, right? But not real danger like that, where a building's burning down, and we all get saved because of them. So it was the right thing to do.
Right on.
So anyway, the reason I brought that up is because Brian knows a hell of a lot more than most of us about Thermopylae and philosophy and ancient Greece, right?
Well, our joke is I may come from Athens to visit you in Sparta.
There you go. Yeah. So you wore a robe. I had a shield and a sword.
Yeah. You know,
but you're coming around.
We hit the gym though as well. Healthy mind and a healthy mind and a healthy body. I mean, it takes both, right?
I've had people argue with me that the Athenians did better than the Spartans, right? They outlasted them. So what would you say, being a student of history? Why is that?
Well, what I love about the classic Greek philosophers is their idea of the summum bonum, what the ultimate goal is of life, right? And they called that eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is eudaimon. It literally means good soul. So their whole study of wisdom and how we translate that as happiness, but it's not really happiness. Because a hedonic happiness doesn't put you out on a Spartan race on a cold, freezing, sleety, snowy morning. It more directly translates as flourishing. So when you live with eudaimonia, you're flourishing. You're expressing the best within yourself, and you're paying attention to that inner voice within, which they call the daimon. And then the way you do that is via one word, which is arete. You live with excellence. You express the best version of yourself, not tomorrow or someday, but right this moment, moment to moment to moment. And when you do that, you close the gap between who you're capable of being and who you're actually being. When you do that, how does that feel? It feels really, really good. Even if you're getting hammered, 10 miles into a 13-mile course.
It's funny you say that because I met the preeminent Spartan professor. Studied, 50 plus years, Cambridge, focused only on Sparta. And he said because I said, tell me what were the 5 things or the 7 things? And one of the things they really believed in and preached, which is what you just said, was they didn't focus on legacy. They focused on right now doing an incredible job. And they said, if they do an incredible job right now, there will be legacy.
When I remember you telling me that story, if I recall correctly, the very first thing was structure.
That's right.
So they encouraged structure.
Yep.
So a big thing for us in our work at Optimize is we call it emotional stamina. So having the emotional stamina to show up, and the worse you feel, the more committed you are to your protocol. So what do? AM-wise, PM-wise, that helps you show up as your best self. Well, you do that, and you do it even more powerfully when you feel horrible. And then you kind of start getting rid of the big swings up and down, and your prior worst days become some of your best days. So I think that protocol and the structure that the Spartans are renowned for is ultimately what it's all about.
I love it. And I love the story, going back to that professor, when he said to me, one of his favorite stories was, I forget what impending disaster was coming. There was there was a fight brewing in Greece. And somebody ran from Athens. One of your people came up and said, we need you. Our future is dire. And they said, well, we're in the middle of our festival. We don't have time.
See you next week.
We'll see you next week. We got shit to get done here. We got Susie's baking the cake over there. And we need you now. And finally, the Spartans said, all right, we'll send one guy. And the story goes, one guy travels the 100 miles, whatever, gets down there, sits with the enemy and says, listen, do you really want me to go get all my brothers? And we're going to kill you guys. All right, fine. You're right. we'll leave. And so that's just an awesome story.
Yeah, just there's no scenario in which they're going to compromise their values. They needed to honor the gods. And again, the daimon, to bring it back to your daimon, that's your kind of channel to the ultimate gods that they were celebrating when they weren't willing to compromise. It's just pure integrity, Yeah. What needs to get done. That's what we're going to do. End of discussion. Next.
What I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, in this Italian neighborhood I grew up in, which was riddled with organized, there was nothing philosophical about it or academic, but there was a lot of the things you're talking about. They practice actually, the local masons, that little family masonry business, just got the fucking job done every day, right? And they did a great job.
Well, that was, again, your story of building your business, You just do the right thing. Again, it's do the right thing, do the right thing, do the right thing. Now, there's a longer discussion around the morality, around the ultimate end that's involved in different groups. But any group that's going to excel is going to excel because of excellence, right? I mean, that's
right.
That's the
you do a great job. People notice, and it comes back.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's pretty rare these days. So there you go. And by the way, the byproduct of doing that is happiness, which is also rather rare these days, right? So if you want to experience that.
So participating in excellence, doing a great job, delivers happiness all the time.
One word. I mean,
right.
Literally, the Greek said the ultimate goal in life, the Aristotle, et cetera, that express the best version of yourself moment to moment to moment. If you do that, if you live with what they called arete, which is virtue as we translate it, or excellence, there's literally no room. So if there's a gap, I'm capable of this, I'm doing this, right? In that gap is where regret, anxiety, disillusionment, depression exist. If you close the gap, there's no room for it. And then you're so busy doing what needs to get done, you're not even thinking about it. You're just feeling that sense of joy.
I'm so happy you're saying this because you're bringing me back 40 years, okay? I'm building my first business. And I remember a young kid. I'm young at the time, and I remember a young kid working with me, telling me he was depressed, and I didn't really understand that word. And as I thought about it for the next few months, I thought, who has time to be depressed? I'm trying to build a business. I'm working my ass off. And so then I started, literally, I made the leap with that thought, and I said, I bet you in third world countries where people are just working, there's no depression. There's no therapists.
They're engaged. And yet, this is the common human experience. There's a reason why Aristotle was talking about it 2,500 years ago, and why Leonidas was creating, structure within the Spartan community. Is that it's simultaneously easy when you kind of get the trick, yet it isn't. It's simple, I should say, yet not easy. But the answer is this: the answer is have a clear target. Telos is what they would say in Athens, right? Yeah. What's your target? Take aim and then do your best, unattached to the outcome, right? So I missed 3 obstacles yesterday. I thanked you with every burpee,
Nice.
And I thanked my surgeon with every obstacle I crossed.
How'd your wrist feel?
My wrist feels great. I put 20 screws in it, as you know, in February. Was coming out here, didn't plan to do the race, just wanted to see you and see some other friends. And my son, Emerson, 7 years old, this weekend, he sees one of your racers who's an amputee. He's got one leg, and he comes back and he says, Daddy, if he can do the race, you can do the race.
Nice.
This is 2 days before the race, and I haven't done more than 3 miles in my training,
For those listening, Brian found Spartan a couple of years ago, went crazy, started building obstacles in his garage. He said,
backyard,
in his backyard.
Office.
And how did you break your wrist? What did you do?
I just climbed our 20-foot rope, which thankfully I did not fall off of. And then we've got a wall traverse, which I hammered yesterday. I was very happy about that.
Nice.
It was a rainy day. I'm deliberately training in it because I want to get used to different conditions. And it was just one of the worst possible, falls. Walked into the kitchen holding my hand. My son takes a look, screams, runs into his room, slams the door. 20 screws later in February, the surgeon told me I wouldn't do burpees again. I do 100 burpees every day for years now. Since you convinced me that you do 30 burpees, you're not getting sick. Anyway, he told me 9 to 12 months. So I wasn't supposed to even be doing burpees yet because it was only 7 months ago. But yeah, that was the fun.
When Brian emailed me and said I broke my wrist and showed me a picture of it with all these screws in it, I said, "Good." What did I say?
Good. Yeah, good. I hope it hurt.
But good. I hope it hurt. Somehow ties back to that ancient philosophy, right?
Yeah, and again, when you step back far enough, pain in itself can be a source of joy. I got all dinged up a little bit yesterday. And Paulo Coelho, one of my favorite writers, said, you want to bury your scars like medals, your psychological scars and your real scars. So I look at this, and this is a medal for me. This is a
legitimately medal.
Literally, no, yeah, titanium. I'm right. Walking through airport now with having fun conversations. So, but it literally is a medal. Our failures, our mistakes. Right. We need to redefine this. This is the point of life is to evolve and to learn and to, as we would say, optimize and be the best version of yourself. And you only get there by being willing to fail. And fine, go bang out your real or metaphorical 30 burpees and get back at it a little bit stronger, right?
Yeah. So why do we have such a tough time convincing people to get out there and earn their medals?
I think we're overly comfortable in our comfort zones. By definition, to go outside of your comfort zone, which is where the ancient Spartans and the Athenians, they got that. And so it was deliberate practice to get outside of your comfort zone, which by definition feels uncomfortable. Right. But in our society, you push a button and you're instantly entertained or you're instantly warm. And it's just, we're coddled to death in a way, right?
We were we did a podcast with Nir Eyal. He's an author. What was his first
Indistractables.
book? Indistractables is his new book. What was his first book? Hooked. Check out that book, Hooked, and Indistractable. And so he said to me, which I thought was awesome, the number one motivator for a human being is avoiding discomfort. Do you agree with that?
I mean, I think the default is you want to have an efficient use of your energy. It's an evolutionarily adaptive thing. Right. And in our modern society, boy, you can really violate that wired programming. And of course, you've got, as he knows, and he shares so brilliantly, lots of people behind the screens trying to get you to be really
hooked,
comfortably hooked, addicted, right, etc. But again, we get back to the idea of flourishing. If your ultimate goal and you're wise enough to know that the real game we're playing, which is what I describe, it's eudaimonology. You want to study that. How do I have a good soul? How do I truly flourish? And then we reverse the whole thing, and we realize, no, my infinite potential exists just on the other side of my comfort zone. Therefore, I'm going to say bring it on to a Spartan race or to anything that's going to get me out of that comfort zone long enough to get a little bit better, right?
Yeah, I mean, I what we talked about, with Nir and I talked about, was I must have, for me and all the Spartans out there and you, we must have figured out it's more uncomfortable to not do it, right?
When you've defined the game that you're playing as, I don't want to die with my potential unexpressed, then it becomes really uncomfortable to turn away from opportunities of growth. Yeah, and then what do? You do the exact opposite, and you lean in, and you literally say, my coach, Phil Stutz, wrote a book called The Tools, and his number one tool is you literally say to pain, bring it on. I love pain. Pain sets me free. And you redefine your relationship to that discomfort as your fuel, your ticket to getting better. And then I think I've told you about our mantra. Did I tell you about our mantra?
No, tell me the mantra.
So there's kind of the classic Om, right?
Yeah,
Om, relax.
Oh my God.
So which is fantastic, obviously. You need it all. Yeah. But for us, in our work, especially when we talk about, optimize and Spartan, we have OMMS, OMMS, and it's the hero's mantra is how we describe it. Yeah. Obstacles make me stronger.
Oh, I love it.
So I'm going out there, I'm on the course. I'm like, whatever. Obstacles make me stronger.
I like that.
Let's do this, right?
I'm going to steal that if that's okay.
Please do.
I like that. OMMS.
I got it from you.
I used to get the, it used to drive me crazy. You just brought me back 30, 40 years. My mother used to just Om in the living room, and it was, again, there were tough kids outside, doing bad things that I wanted to be around. And I got OMMS going on in the living room. That was not what I wanted to be connected to.
Yeah. And again, it's yes and all of it, right? So there's the real soft, passive stillness. I meditate every day, 20, 30 minutes. Missed one day in the last 11 years. So that's important.
Nice.
But then there's also I do that so I can be a vehicle for my daimon. Yeah. To come through in service to the world. At the end of the day, and why you're wearing a Spartan Serve shirt and why you were gifted the SOS
box,
Navy
the bomb,
SEALs.
It's called the SOS bomb box.
Yeah, that's exactly, right. You can see it detonating, and why the SEALs go to Thermopylae to get you some sand, dude. Yeah. But it's because you're using these gifts in service to the world. At the end of the day, to go back to another one of my favorite Greek words, I love etymology and stuff like that. So optimize is Latin for optimus, right? It's where it comes from. And that means the best. So when I say optimize, we're talking about the best version of someone. How do we help you become the best version of you? And then I say, okay, well, that's nice, but that equals eudaimon, the one that's expressing himself. But that's not enough. That equals you as a hero. And do you know the etymology of the word hero in Greek? No. So when they were coming up with the word for hero, they didn't say tough guy or killer of bad guys. The word that they used, and it's spelled, the way we spelled is Heros with lines over the E's, which I find beautiful. It meant protector. So a hero is a protector. And as I say, a hero has strength for two. And then their secret weapon is love and compassion. So you go out and you run these races, not so you can take a six-pack, selfie and whatever, check you out. That's great. That's a nice byproduct. Yeah. But you do it so you can be stronger, and you can be a protector for your family, for your community, for the world. And ultimately, to me, that's why I do what I do, and why I know you do what you do. Yeah. Is that can we live heroically? And
I agree. I think even being here at Tahoe, you see the people are all that.
Fittest people on the planet. You walk around here and
not just fit, but you could see they're all serving.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. For something bigger than themselves. They're living for something bigger than themselves. They're with I ran into a woman in the elevator, a 2-month-old baby. Her 7-year-old daughter's been doing Spartans for years, and he's a young Spartan. And we're living for something bigger than ourselves. I mean, this is what all great teachers across all spiritual and philosophical traditions have said. Honor this temple that we've been given, that is our body, and actualize its potential. Why? In service to the world. And again, what else is there to do on this brief little journey we've got, right?
Yeah. Why don't we go out in the cold? It's snowing right now. Knock out the 100 burpees, and then come back and talk about burning the monastery.
We will be right back to this episode, but first we're going to talk about our sponsor, Trueform. And Johnny, do you remember last year at World Championships when those 4 intrepid athletes decided to lock themselves in a shipping container for 24 hours on one of these?
Yeah, not just lock themselves in a shipping container, lock themselves in a shipping container and see who could run the furthest on a treadmill. Sounds completely nuts.
We love
Spartan,
it.
we're completely nuts. Fortunately, there's also a company out there that's equally committed to doing the work, and it's True Form Treadmills.
Way to go, True Form.
Yeah, no, honestly.
Yeah, it's a beautiful marriage.
Incredible partnership. So what we did, we locked these 4 guys in
Whatever a
a
tri-marriage
dark,
is.
silent space. They ran on a True Form treadmill. And you know the cool thing about this? They did the work. So a normal treadmill, it starts to spin. You just try and keep up with it. It does all the work for you. And if you run badly, you just run badly faster. True Form, you have to make it move. You do the work. It makes you do the work properly. That's the other thing. It makes you run better. People think that practice makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Imperfect practice makes injury. So True Form has put together a program that's going to solve all that for you.
Yep.
You go to trueformrunner.com. They have a program. For a monthly payment, you're going to get the machine.
You get a workout of the day.
Training program. You're even going to get a gait analysis that shows you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong.
And then you even get entry at the gate to a Spartan race.
Yeah, they're
Awesome.
throwing a free Spartan race in. And you know what? If you want to run faster, you want to run better, you want to run Spartan races, you really need to do this. Trueformrunner.com.
All right, let's run back to this episode, Johnny.
Good call, Sephra.
Hey, let's talk about the Spartan Tea for a second. What do you think? You
I
like
think
it?
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, so I'm in Sparta because we have a race there, a championship race, and shame on me, I'm embarrassed to say I had never been to Sparta before. Here we were building this global brand with the name Spartan, and I'd never been to Sparta. And I go there for the event. I meet the mayor, and there is a little town up on the mountain as part of Sparta called Avenetti. And when I say up on the mountain, Sparta is in this valley, and there's a mountain range on one side, a mountain range on the other, which is probably part of what protected them other than their spears and their shields. And they're snow-capped mountains. That's how big the mountains are there. And so we go up into this little town, Avenetti, and I said, where did this town come from? And he said, well, what happened was when the kids would do the agoge, they would all go up on the mountain for like 13 years, and they would live and find food, and so it started to become like, inhabited. And then the Jews, I guess, got pushed out like 1,500 years ago of Sparta, and they went up there and turned it into like businesses and leather shops and this and that. So there's this cool little like stone town that's pretty empty. And so I said, like, there's this beautiful road that goes there. There's these wonderful stone buildings. Where is everybody? And they said, well, when this road went in the 60s, everybody left and went to Queens, New York. And so if you go to Queens, like there's in Astoria is all Greek. And so anyway, as I'm standing there, I'm seeing all these people on the mountainside all the way up to the snow picking these flowers, this plant. I ask what it is, and they said, oh, that's the tea. And they go into the story that Hippocrates and Socrates would drink this tea. The warriors would drink it, and then they would take the plant after it was boiled, and they said it's really hard to boil because it's a tough plant. And the higher it grows, the more valuable it is and the more powerful it is because it's tougher. And then they rubbed it on their cuts and their bruises. And so I was like, this is unbelievable. I can't even believe I'm hearing this. We got to get this. And so bales of it started showing up in my office, and everybody thought it was like pot and hemp. And I had to try to explain my way out of it. But anyway, and I hate to sound like a late night TV commercial because we'll never make any real money from this, but we could end up making an impact on Sparta, which would be cool. Because we'll be paying people over there to harvest this stuff. And you can't set up a farm to grow this. Like it's got to grow on the mountain and the rocks it's pretty cool.
Are you kidding me? That's super cool. And by the way, I need an extra batch for the little burns I got. You came back with a travertine or whatever. What was the thing?
You know what? You just gave me an idea. At the end of every race, we should have a pot full of boiling, and people should just take it and rub it all over their cuts and bruises. I love it. Well, burning the monastery.
Burning the monastery. We talked about that in different contexts. Yeah, for me, I spent 5 years in what I called a hermitage. Basically no email, no smartphone, etc. And then it became clear it was time to come out. So burned it. So Thich Nhat Hanh, I actually opened up his book on Zen, and literally to the page, right when I'm thinking about, is it time to burn my hermitage? And he tells a story, this beautiful poem about how when he was a young boy, really, and entered the monastery, he cried, he wept. And then when it became time for him to burn the monastery, he cried and he wept. But it was time to go back out in the world. And this idea of taking the time, and I do it on a daily basis, on a daily basis, check in, go to your monastery, plug into something bigger than yourself, whatever it is for you, and then give us what you got, right?
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I don't know if people right away get it. Like, why would you burn the monastery? And then what's the thought? Like, does that mean nobody else can use the monastery? Like,
well, it's your monastery, so it's obviously a metaphorical representation of there are times in our lives where we need to do the work. We need to step back, and for me, it's cultivating soul force. So I talk about eudaimonia a lot, right? So eudaimon, good soul. What we're creating is soul force. So why I train, why I meditate, why I eat the way I do, why I go to bed when I do, soul force. That's it. At the end of the day, do you have the soul force you want? So the monastery needs to be burned in the metaphorical sense, because we didn't come here to live in a monastery. We came here to fuel up and then give ourselves to the world.
And so it's a fuel up, and then if you got that soul force, you're able to serve more people.
Profoundly is what we say. Serve profoundly, as profoundly as you can.
I got to add that to the shirt. All right.
Yeah,
Spartan, serve profoundly. What are 3 things that people out there could do to better optimize their life? Just 3 things.
Yeah, well, we're training, as you know, over 1,000 people in our optimized coach protocol.
To become
optimized certified coaches.
Nice.
And the number one thing we teach them is what we call eudaimonology. So psychology actually means the study of the soul. I playfully say I think they got it wrong. What they should have named it, because you usually study a sick soul in psychology, what they should have called it is eudaimonology, the study of a good soul. So I start by saying you got to know the game you're playing. You got to remember summum bonum. The greatest good is to actualize your potential. When you do that, you start changing the game rules, right? You do things that are hard. So that's the number one thing.
Do hard things.
Do hard things. Well, know the game you're playing. And then when you know the game you're playing...
Does know the game you're playing, is it similar to knowing your purpose?
Well, your purpose falls within that. So if I'm playing Scrabble, I have different rules I'm following than if I'm playing Clue. So you got to know the game you're playing as a human being. It's not, let me see how many Cheetos I can eat and how much, binge Netflix I can indulge in. It's, let me see if I can actualize my potential. And then you have a very different orientation toward life. So I start there, and then we teach them what we call the big 3 times 2 plus 1s. So, Stephen Covey talked about roles and goals. In life, you have a lot of roles, and you want to identify your goals. Tony Robbins says the same thing in a different way. He says you have categories of improvement. So what areas of your life do you want to improve? I say, well, that's awesome, but it gets confusing really fast because there's a lot of them, right? And then Freud said life is really about successful living is work and love. 2 things, that's it, work and love. And I say, okay, that's nice, but we need to add a 3rd thing that we call it the big 3. First, you need to get your energy right, because if your energy isn't optimized, you can have a really hard time showing up for work and love. So we teach, and I would recommend people think about your big 3. Who are you at your best? Energy, work, and love-wise. For me, every morning I sit down and I journal. My identity in energy is world-class Spartan athlete. That's my identity. So I show up today, which brings us to the 3rd point, like that. And then work, I'm the founder and leader of Optimize. That means something to me. And then in love, I want to be an exemplary father. That means a lot to me, right? So we journal the identity and then the virtues we're going to embody and then what we're going to do today to be in integrity with that. So anyway, you know the game you're playing. You know how to win it by optimizing these 3 aspects, the big 3, energy, work, and love. And then the 3rd thing for us is carpe diem, seize the day. What are you going to do today to move from theory to practice to mastery? It's nice to think about these things and to listen to stuff like this and read books, but at the end of the day, did you actually put it into practice? Which brings us back to Athens and Sparta. The old school Stoics, I kind of love Rome too, right? The old school Stoics, they said, look, you can be a librarian of the mind, which is important. You need to go to the library and learn. But true philosophy, the true lover of wisdom, is a warrior of the mind. They show up and they actually live this stuff. They're at their edge, they're out of their comfort zones, and they're striving to live with virtue in service to the world. So those are the 3 things.
So just to put a fine point on that last one, because we do a podcast, we write books, but some people get stuck just listening to podcasts and reading books and theorizing about stuff. And what you're saying is get the outside.
Why I do Spartan races, so why I fell in love with you and with Spartan races is obstacles make me stronger. And the sport that is obstacle course racing in general, but Spartan races in particular, is tapping into this ancient wisdom, which modern science proves, with a practical course where I can go actually pay to face obstacles. And I'm laughing, thanking you. Literally every burpee I did, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. So I'm here paying to face obstacles. So in my life, when I'm striving to do big things and make a difference in the world, and I'm facing inevitable obstacles, I don't complain about it. I remind myself, no, you go pay to do this. That's your sport. So for me, it's a metaphorical representation of how I'm committing myself to winning the game that I keep on saying is so important. And that's why I love Spartan Race so much.
I love you.
All right, man. Love you too,
awesome.
brother.
All right. OMMS.
What is it? Obstacles make me stronger.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a very cool meditation.
I love that. I mean, we all could use some obstacles in our life. Now, one thing I would say, I don't know if you agree with this or not, Johnny, but if we were in a really difficult part of India, we probably wouldn't be preaching that. We'd be preaching couches and maybe some French fries.
Well, that's a great point, though, because there are a lot of places in the world where life is inherently difficult, right? And so it's legitimate that you would want to make life a little bit more comfortable.
Exactly.
It's funny. There's a guy I know in my hometown who he's been posting a lot lately about the hardships in his life and the fact that times are hard financially and he's lost his car and now he's got to walk everywhere and he's a big, heavy guy. And I've reached out to him the other day. I said, this is a blessing, dude. Like, trust me, this someday will be a good thing for you, this walking, because most of us actually do need our life to be a little bit more difficult.
I mean, can you imagine the uproar if, let's say buildings were only 2 stories high. Let's just visualize a world where buildings only went up 2 stories and all the elevators were shut. The uproar. We got to take the stairs every day.
I sent Joe a great joke a while ago, and it was, what did it say? It said, whoever's getting on the elevator going down on the 2nd floor had better have a broken leg.
Exactly.
And I thought about that. It's so funny in the Spartan office in Boston. When that door opens coming up on the Spartan office, and everyone looks at it just horrified, like, who just took the elevator?
Who would take the elevator?
Sometimes
I do my phone calls right at the elevator, and people that are attempting to get in the elevator, they'll look the other way. Here's a great one. And I know we're not really going off track here, but I was just in Sparta, Greece, and unbeknownst to me, there is a spa that was built in the last 24 months, 5-star, best in Greece, hands down, maybe the best in Europe. Woman must have spent literally $50 million. I find out about it because of the mayor of Sparta wants to show me this new beautiful spa. So I want to be accommodating, and I'm walking around. I don't really have time for it. We got a race coming, and I'm seeing some Spartans in the spa. This is the day. And they're seeing me, and you see them putting their hands in front. They're afraid to show me that they actually have decided to get a massage or jump in a hot tub. So I agree. Add more obstacles to our lives, at least in the first world.
So I want to mention, you guys look pretty comfortable. You're sitting in the nice chairs at the Spartan headquarters at the World Media Fest, brought to you by ETV Science at the World Championships. But Brian is not.
We were drinking Spartan Tea, by the way.
And you're drinking Spartan Tea. But Brian's also not a guy who shies away from hardship either. I mean, what did he? He went and did a beast. He just broken his wrist not too long ago. He's been doing his 100 burpees a day anyway.
He fell in his backyard. He broke his wrist. He sent me an immediate text, and he said, "Hey, I broke my wrist in like 4 places. They've got to put in steel bolts." And typical Spartan Joe, because I do this with people all over the world, my response was good.
Yeah, that's right.
There was no, and he just loves talking to me because it really is like Athens and Sparta.
Yeah, very, very much so. Absolutely. Yeah. And he is such an intelligent guy. I've been following him for years. He's done a lot of really cool work over the years. His philosopher notes are amazing. One of my favorite things I saw him in, and he and I had a great conversation about this, was called Finding Joe. And Finding Joe is a documentary about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And it interviews a lot of people, Laird Hamilton, Mike Dooley, a lot of cool people about the hero's journey. And Joe, the Spartan is all about the hero's journey, Spartan race, right? It's about leaving the comfort, going out and seeking that challenge and conquering that challenge and coming and reintegrating it into your life. And Brian really impressed me with his, not just his wisdom, but his ability to convey that wisdom. And he's such a clear, concise communicator.
Very clear communicator. Excellence.
Excellence. I love that. He talks about be excellent now. And we're always looking, what can we do someday? How can we plan to make our life better? He said, why not be excellent now? And the only path to excellence, or so the only path to excel, is excellence.
It's excellence. I remember when I was young and I heard that word someday, and I was flipping through the calendar and I just couldn't find it. There's no someday, right? There's
Monday.
a Saturday,
Yeah.
Sunday. There's a Monday, but there's no Sunday.
It's actually 2 day. 2 day is
There you go.
someday.
There you
Yeah,
go.
no, it's a great point.
Yeah.
But actually, that's a good segue too, because closing the gap between someday and today, I loved. And Tony Trucks, another great interview we did recently with Anthony Trucks, talks about identifying the gap between who you are and who you could be. And Brian says the exact same thing. He said, I don't want to die with my potential unexpressed. That's the game I'm going to play. And he says, if you can close the gap between who you're being and who you're capable of being, you'll get rid of all the misery, because all the dissatisfaction, depression, and anxiety comes from recognizing that I'm not being who I could be and I'm responsible for that.
I want this, but I'm here. So you either have to take the want down, right, and accept who you are, or you got to push.
Well, and more importantly, I want to be this, right? It's not just what you could have, but it's what you could be. And if you know that you could be this, I could be a better father, I could be a better business person, I could be it. Then be it. And all the time you spend not being it is creating all the anxiety and dissatisfaction in your life.
No, I love that. Redefine the game you're playing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of us don't even recognize that we're playing a game. All of life is game playing. I don't mean to minimize it. I mean, you have to look at it that way if you're going to be successful. But he says, why not look at the game, look at the rules, figure out what they are, and then even better, redefine them. Like, decide what is the game you're going to play, what are the rules, and then go out and do it.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like
and then
that a lot.
the other thing that I love that he said, and it's funny, Mary and I were talking off camera, I may have misheard it. I heard bear your scars like medals. What he's saying is all these things that we go through life and their hardships, and we've got these scars. He said these are medals. Like there's honor in that.
How many times have we met somebody paralyzed, missing a leg,
Yeah.
burned,
Yeah.
alive, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they're proud of those
sure.
things. They don't shy away from it.
Absolutely.
So they're burying them as medals.
Well, and
right?
I think back to Chris Waddell, who came and spoke at the Spartan World Championships in Tahoe, paralyzed in college in a wheelchair. I mean, he's excelled in life, and he talks about how we need to stop seeing so many things as disabilities and start realizing that in a lot of ways, once you own it. And Shea Eskew, who was burned, now he's an Ironman. He talks about he's found a way to own it and turn it into a massive strength. So bear your scars like medals is huge to me. And so much that Brian said is huge. He's pretty incredible.
So with that, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
What scars do you have, and which ones are you gonna polish and bear as medals?
That's a great question. What's something that you could have looked at as bad that's happened to you? Something, a challenge, a struggle, a hardship you faced, and how is that now a medal? How are you going to own that and make yourself better with it?
And make sure you subscribe on YouTube, because if you don't, we're gonna come to your house, and you don't want us.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by True Form Runner. Conquer your next race with the complete training solution from Spartan and True Form. The Spartan True Form Trainer will redefine your running. Find out more at trueformrunner.com.